Have you ever wondered why you react so strongly to certain things in a relationship? Why does someone not replying makes you anxious? Why do you feel the need to constantly prove that you are worthy of love? Why do you shut down whenever there is an argument? Or why do you keep choosing the same kind of relationship even when you promised yourself you wouldn't? Sometimes the answer isn't just in your adult life. It can begin much earlier, in childhood. The way we experienced love, attention, conflict, safety, and rejection while growing up can influence the way we understand relationships as adults. But here is something important. Your childhood can influence your patterns, but it does not permanently define you. Let's understand how. Before romantic relationships, there is another relationship that teaches us what relationships are supposed to feel like. Our relationship with our caregivers. As children, we don't have the ability to analyze adult behavior objectively. We simply observe, we notice whether our feelings are listened to, we notice whether mistakes are forgiven, we notice whether affection or unpredictable. We notice what happens when we cry, disagree, or ask for attention. And gradually, our brain starts creating a model of relationships. For example, a child who regularly experiences warmth and emotional support may learn, my feelings matters, I can ask for help, people can disagree and still love me. But a child who frequently experiences criticism, emotional unpredictability, neglect, or conflict may develop very different expectations. They might learn, I have to be perfect to be loved. People leave when I disappoint them. My emotions are too much. These beliefs can quietly follow us into adulthood, attachment, and the fear of losing someone. One important psychological concept here is attachment. Attachment refers to the emotional bond we develop with important caregivers and the expectations we develop around closeness and safety. When someone grows up experiencing inconsistent attention or affection, they may become especially sensitive to signs of rejection. As an adult, this might look like your partner takes longer than usual to reply, and suddenly your mind starts racing. Are they angry? Did I do something wrong? Are they losing interest? What if they leave me? The reaction may seem bigger than the situation itself. That's because the present moment may be triggering an older emotional fear. On the other hand, someone who learned to deal with emotions by becoming independent may respond very differently. When conflict appears, they might think, I don't need anyone. They may withdraw, avoid emotional conversation, or struggle to ask for reassurance. So, two people can experience the same relationship problem but react completely differently because they learned different emotional patterns growing up. When love becomes something you have to earn, imagine growing up feeling that phrase can mostly when you achieved something good grades, you received attention, success, you received approval, mistake, you received criticism. Over time, a child may start connecting achievement with worth, and that belief can enter adult relationship. You may feel that you have to constantly be useful, attractive, successful, understanding, or perfect to deserve love. You might become the person who always says, it's okay, I will adjust, I will do better. Don't be angry with me, even when you are hurt. This can create a dangerous misunderstanding. You may start confusing being loved with being useful. Healthy love doesn't require you to constantly earn your place. How childhood conflict shapes adult conflict. Another major influence is how conflict was handled at home. Think about what happened when adults disagree. Was there calm communication, or shouting, or blaming, silent treatment, avoidance? Did people apologize and repair their relationships? Or did everyone simply pretend nothing happened? Children learn by watching, so an adult who grew up around explosive arguments might become extremely sensitive to raised voices. Even a small disagreement may feel threatening. Another person who grew up around emotional silence may learn to shut down instead of communicating. They might leave the room, stop responding, or say, I don't want to talk about it. Not necessarily because they don't care, but because emotional conflict was never modeled as something safe to navigate. Emotional neglect can be quiet. Childhood difficulties aren't always obvious. Sometimes there is food, education, a home, and everything appears normal from the outside. But emotionally, the child doesn't feel understood. Maybe they were told, stop crying, you are being dramatic. It's not a big deal. Other children have bigger problems. When this happens repeatedly, a child may learn to disconnect from their own emotions. And later, they may struggle to identify what they are feeling. They might say, I don't know what's wrong with me. Or they may find it easier to care for everyone else than to express their own needs. In relationships, this can lead to difficulty communicating boundaries, asking for support, or even recognizing when something is hurting them. We can repeat what feels familiar. Sometimes we are attracted to what feels familiar, even when it isn't healthy. If unpredictability was normal during childhood, stability may initially feel strange. If you learn that love comes with emotional distance, you may unconsciously tolerate emotionally unavailable partners. If you learn to constantly seek someone's approval, you may feel drawn toward relationships where you have to keep proving yourself. This does not mean that people intentionally choose unhealthy relationships. And it doesn't mean your childhood determines who you will love. It simply means that our brains can become comfortable with familiar emotional patterns. That's why awareness is so powerful. Because you can't change a pattern you don't recognize. The good news, patterns can change. Now here is the part I really want you to remember. You are not your childhood. Your childhood may have taught you certain beliefs, but adulthood gives you the opportunity to examine them. You can learn to communicate instead of shutting down. You can learn that someone's disappointment doesn't mean you are unlovable. You can learn to set boundaries without feeling guilty. You can learn that healthy relationships don't require constant anxiety. And you can learn to recognize the difference between love and emotional dependency. Sometimes this process happens through self reflection. Sometimes through healthy relationships, and sometimes professional therapy can help you understand patterns that are difficult to see you on your own. Healing doesn't mean blaming your parents for everything. It means understanding where certain patterns may have come from and deciding which ones you no longer want to carry forward. You can build a different relationship. Maybe you grew up believing that love means sacrifice. Maybe you learned to stay silent to keep the peace. Maybe you learned that your emotions were inconvenient. Maybe you learned that people leave when you make mistakes. But you can learn something new. You can learn that love can be safe, that communication can be respectful, that boundaries don't make you selfish, that disagreement doesn't automatically mean abandonment, and that you don't have to become a different person just to deserve love. Your childhood may have written the first chapter of your relationship story, but it doesn't have to write the ending. If this video helped you understand yourself a little better, share it with someone who might need to hear this. And remember, understanding your patterns isn't about blaming your past. It's about creating a healthier future. Thank you so much for watching this video.